This is Betsy and Thomas for the American Intelligence Media. Today we're going to be going over some tweets that have been about the intelligence community, and they've happened over the last few weeks. We're bundling them together. Let me read this. Just concluded a great meeting with my Intel team in the Oval Office who told me that what they said on Tuesday at the Senate hearing was mischaracterized by the media, and we are very much in agreement on Iran, ISIS, North Korea, etc. Their testimony was distorted press. I would suggest you read the complete testimony from Tuesday. A false narrative is so bad for our country. I value our intelligence community. Happily, we had a very good meeting and we're all on the same page. Now, that comes from a tweet a few days prior, where the intelligence community was in front of the Senate and was giving information, but the AP ran a story that basically said that they were going against Trump.
Yes, and in fact they did. And I went back and looked at the transcript, and what has really happened here is something we need to explain so that people will understand. And often it is your top question, Betsy. Where does Trump get his intelligence?
Well, he told the intelligence community in that tweet a few days ago they need to go back to school.
Yes, he did. And he also just told NBC on Face the Nation on Super Bowl Sunday that when the very nervous interviewer said, "What? You don't follow the advice of your intelligence community?" And then she said, "Where do you get your intelligence?" And he said, "I have my own intelligence." Now, I'd like to explain that. And what does he mean by that? People have asked endlessly, where does he get his information? But first, let's characterize what happened there in that Senate Intelligence report, which is a yearly report on the global threat, so that the Senate can be doing their oversight job to make sure that, in fact, global threats are met. So, what was going on there? First off, you have Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, who is just as corrupt as Comey and Andrew McCabe. Yes, and that's really what's going on. What we're about to report here is that these intelligence heads don't know what they're talking about, and they simply parrot what their SES handlers tell them. And in some cases, they are SES, and they were the handlers who moved up into those positions. Trump thinking that these supposed civil servants have actually earned the right to take the next step in advancement, to find out that people like Jeannie Haspel is just as corrupt as Christopher Wray, and they're just as corrupt as Comey and Brennan, without a doubt. But now, first let me frame this. Every 4 or 5 years, the intelligence community, through the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which right now is Dan Coates, writes an assessment. And this assessment is, they just wrote it and put it out. It's called the National Intelligence Strategy. Now, prior to that, the previous one was called the Paradox of Progress. And in it, you have every single war actor, every single adversary, every single political intelligence insight, all wrapped up into that document. It is an amazing document. It's the document we refer to all the time, saying that it predicted Trump, and it predicted exactly what Hillary was about to do. But the new one, go ahead and read it. The National Intelligence Strategy, it's called, from Dan Coates, just got put out. I took the time to read the whole thing, and it was so boring. It was nothing more than a pamphlet of rhetoric. It had absolutely zero intelligence in it, just like the testimony before the Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee. Zero intelligence whatsoever. Not a single fact, not a single document, not a single speck of supporting evidence. No, nothing. Zero. Matter of fact, their remarks were so absurd and ridiculous. I'm going to share some of them with you in a minute. But let's go back to Trump. We've always said, where does Trump get his intelligence? And then people are going to say he gets it from Eric Prince. Blackwater, this DeVos's brother, right? Betsy DeVos's
brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, yeah. and a good friend of Trump, and the person who busted Loretta Lynch in her manipulation of the...
So then Eric Prince has told Trump that it's the Brits that are behind this spying and overthrow operation? Have they told him that? Have they told him what Geoffrey Patty and Richard Dearlove and the Queen are doing, and what the Vatican did? And did they tell you about Joseph Mifsud and his interactions with the Knights of Malta? Is that what the intelligence communities reported to POTUS? Or is he relying on two old retired school teachers?
Well, he's relying on intelligence he gets from wherever he can count on it. Now, having been a real estate shark in New York City, basically the fiery pits of hell, he had to, of course, have his own intelligence. He had a billion-dollar empire, and so, of course, he had his own intelligence. Now, generally, when you're on Wall Street, you use, Kroll, or you use Stratford, you use Oxford Analytica, you use Smith, Brandon, or a bunch of different groups that all help with investment, but they're also opposition groups. They're intelligence groups. So if you really want to, there's nothing more ruthless than corporate intelligence, industrial espionage. There's nothing more ruthless than that. These people will cut your throat for the money, period. They don't care. And so, yes, these are the most ruthless intelligence people in the world. They're not like the NSA, who are military, who come and go in most cases, in terms of the people who are doing the real work. They're not a corporate intelligence agency like Booz Allen Hamilton or Lockheed or L3 or any of the other ones that just make huge amounts of money doing supposed intelligence research work, which never produces anything of value. And this is where I'm going with this. Christopher Wray, you're a complete disaster. Your testimony said that you were terrified of China. That, oh my gosh, China's active measures against us, China's cyber attacks, China's counterintelligence. He says there's nothing bigger on the horizon from the FBI than China's counterintelligence.
Well, that's because he really wanted to say Russia, but he knew that we were really tired of the Russia narrative.
There you go. That's where I was going with this.
Oh, I'm sorry. But it's always the thing. Russia's always the boogeyman. And you know why? That's because of Tavistock. Tavistock early on, we're in a 100-year propaganda war. And it is as real as can be, people. This propaganda leads us into conflicts around the world. It leads us into war because they got to feed their banking system. These guys need money. And war gives them big bucks. As soon as we start educating one another and waking up to this propaganda, we can exit the system.
Yes, and then we won't believe Atlantic Council, which is now basically running the Ministry of Propaganda, the Ministry of Truth over here in America after taking over Britain and Europe. But Christopher Wray didn't seem to notice that Trump has already smashed China. And Christopher Wray was so terrified, of the IP theft and the cyber theft. Christopher Wray, you are so late to this dinner. China had courtesy copies of every email sent to Hillary since 2010. Where are you, Christopher Wray? Oh, that's right. Christopher Wray's the guy who inherited the jump drive as one version, and 6 CDs as the second version of the 33,000 missing Hillary emails, because he is protecting them. He also has her laptop. He also has a clean forensic copy of her server. Also, on and on and on. Christopher Wray's as cryptic as could be. And what did he say? Oh, he's not worried about, how about the invasion of 12,000 people in a caravan filled with our enemies, filled with war fighters and war actors, and he doesn't even mention it. Oh, that's not a problem to him. Doesn't even exist. As the FBI director, he did not report to the Senate Intelligence Committee that the number one global threat in America, where he's supposed to be paying attention, not counterintelligence, which is China. Notice how he is focused on China now? China? Trump is bashing China. China will become our vassal in a year or two. So just watch what happens to their economy. So Christopher Wray's an idiot. I didn't know it until I heard him speak extensively the other day. I mean, he's absolutely an idiot. He reminds me of King Farquaad in Shrek. Nothing but a facade, a giant head, a puffed up chest, and just a little teensy tiny man, a little puppet. He's a little puppet with a big head. And he doesn't say anything intelligent. Oh, my Lord, what he said, everything he said was a lie. And it was stupid. And it was if he was 10 years out of sync. And if he didn't notice that we're being attacked on the southern border. And then later he lied to Trump and basically said, I didn't say that. That was mischaracterized.
No.
It wasn't mischaracterized. We have your quotes.
It's okay. It's legal to lie. We've found that out. So Christopher Wray could sit there and he can lie in those hearings and nothing's going to happen to him.
Let's go to Jeannie Haspel. She was the director of the CIA London Center during the time that the the fake Russian dossier Trump collusion was invented by Brits. So on her watch in London, she witnessed the whole thing because it was in the newspaper every day.
Well, surely she's given a report to Donald Trump about this.
No, Trump went to the CIA and said, get rid of these columns. In other words, get rid of the fifth column. Get rid of attacking me from the side. And so what has she done since then? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Was she part of the overthrow of Trump?
She is absolutely 100% complicit in the British Spygate. She absolutely 100% would have had to have known about Stephen Halper, about George Papadopoulos, about the whole thing, Joseph Misfit. Yes. She had to have known. Impossible for her not to have known.
Well, if she didn't know, then she's totally inept and she should not have held that position, and certainly not the position she holds now. So were you inept, Gina, or are you complicit? It's one or the other.
Well, how about this? We just mentioned the other day that at least once a week we see the mainstream lying media put out some statement that North Korea is continuing its missiles and continuing to put warheads on missiles and continuing its nuclear proliferation and blah, 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 blah. So, Jeannie Haspel, your number one job right now, since we're in negotiations for peace with North Korea, is to come up with real intelligence. And your real intelligence, here was her real intelligence on North Korea. We believe that the leadership of North Korea will not give up nuclear proliferation because their regime's security is based upon it. That's the stupidest thing that could possibly be said about intelligence. Give us some real statistics. Give us some pictures. We haven't seen any pictures of any nuclear proliferation in North Korea. We've seen everything to the opposite of that.
Look, they can't give you real stuff because there is no real stuff. They're counting on their old playbook where they threw out this propaganda and then the media, which is also propaganda, would drum it up and people weren't paying attention. And then we would be led to these conflicts and wars. But people are woke now. We're asking questions, like the sighting of Ruth Bader Ginsburg at this event, and the Washington Post came out with it in the AP, and you read the article and you're like, oh my gosh, no pictures, no one can verify it, it's all hearsay. And really, in an event that was honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there would be no announcement there to thank her personally and for being in attendance. No, it was a cop-out. Let me tell you what they're doing. They're making it seem like there's an appearance because when she doesn't show up for the State of the Union, they're going to say, well, she never attends with a Republican president. Hey, look, Ruthie, you need to show your happy little butt out here. The people want to know if you're alive or not. And if the FBI and Christopher Wray were doing their job, they would be looking too. I am hereby filing an official missing person report to Christopher Wray. Ruth Bader Ginsburg has not been seen in 2 months.
Not only that, but she doesn't attend the State of the Union message if it's given by a Republican.
She needs to show up. She's a Supreme Court justice and they're not supposed to be taking sides.
Precisely. That shows her partisanship. It shows her bias, and she should then be fired because you can't be a Supreme Court justice and be unbiased and be so biased. So let's go back to Gina. Gina, why didn't you tell the Senate Intelligence Committee, and then why did you lie in what it is that you did release about what you said when you talked about it later with the press? Why didn't you talk about the fact that, since you're CIA, Iran has had missiles the entire time? They've had a nuclear program the entire time. They've never stopped enriching uranium. In other words, all violations, and yet they say you literally reported that Iran was not in violation. You must be out of your mind. The $150 billion that John Kerry and Obama and Hillary gave to Iran was used to buy missiles to take to Syria to shoot at Israel. How do you think that is not being out of basically what should have been a peace deal, but it turned into, because Obama got so involved, he wanted to give them a lot of money. It turned into a trade deal. It wasn't a trade deal. It was, we're going to give you $150 billion so that you can attack Israel and make sure that you give plenty to your Iranian Revolutionary Guard, to Syria, to ISIS in Syria, to ISIL in Syria, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and to the Palestinians. Make sure that $150 billion gets spread around and you buy only Chinese and Russian missiles. Matter of fact, Russia's happy because a lot of those missiles they're using came from them. So they got a good deal. And if anything happens with the missile launchers, they can fix them because Russia's right there in Syria. We'll go to Dan Coates in just a minute, but let's finish with Gina. Gina, how come as the CIA you didn't know? How dare you say that they are in general, in compliance? They are not in compliance. How about the sanction workaround that the EU just did, particularly through Germany, bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars against the sanctions to give to Iran, and you're not doing anything about it? Unbelievable. Gina, you are a total disaster.
Yes.
Now, Dan Coates, you were given a task quite some time ago when we found out about the surveillance, how pervasive it was, and Trump gave you a task in 30 days to give a plan on how you will stop all surveillance of Americans. You did not turn in a plan. You did not do anything. You resisted the president. We all knew at that point that you were part of the resistance. You are nothing more than what we harp against, which is basically taking intelligence and giving it over to unintelligent people, taking military intelligence, taking the NSA data, raw data, and actually being able to understand it, and then using the National Security Advisor or the head of the National Security Council, which is generally a military person, to then let that feed Trump his intelligence. No. We have the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, a totally made-up office. Some years ago, they started basically inculcating corporate takeover of our intelligence. And that's what we have now. Who's in charge of our intelligence? Oh, people who are out in corporate intelligence. Like, where did Clapper go? Back to corporate intelligence. Where did Brennan go? Back to corporate intelligence.
But don't forget, they're CNN spokespeople as well.
Oh, at the same
because
time.
the CIA is CNN. I mean, how do you think CNN wound up at Roger Stone's doorstep before the FBI showed up?
Exactly. So, Jeannie Haspel, you run the fifth column. Trump knows it. Why would he listen to you? Christopher Wray, you have testified before Congress that you have the missing 33,000 emails that you were accusing George Papadopoulos of trying to get, though he never did, and starting the entire counterintelligence operation, a black ops operation against the president, against President Trump as he was running in his campaign, and later as the president. It's still going on. The Mueller investigation is that coup. So how is it that you, who were 100% complicit throughout the whole time, Christopher Wray, didn't seem to notice any of that? And you have all this evidence sitting in your office, including Imran Awan's laptop that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was ready to, she paid off mortgages on his houses so that he could leave the country because he saved her day with that laptop by putting the legal note on it and so on and so forth. But then they sent in a fake DOJ person. They sent in a fake lawyer who didn't know anything about it at the end of the trial, so that Imran Alwan was given complete immunity for everything he ever testified against, which was his espionage case.
And this is all under Dan Coates' watch.
Yes. Now, Dan Coates continues to surveil everyone, as Clapper told us. Clapper, of course, lied at first, and then he told the truth.
How would you know? They can all lie.
Oh, they have lied. And
it's just a nightmare. I don't want to hear any more hearings in Congress until Matt Gaetz's bill is passed by both the Congress, the House, and the Senate. We have to stop this lying.
Clapper, Brennan, Comey are all liars. They've perjured themselves. They've been gotten so many lies it's ridiculous. But worse than that, they've all abnegated their security agreements. They all need to go straight to military jail. Because what they did is they revealed privileged information from presidential conversations with them. Totally illegal. Not only that, they ran an operation against the president, a sitting president, a coup d'etat. And then they go out to work for mainstream media and go back to work for corporate intelligence, taking all that they know, and then they get upset when we take away their security clearances. Just by your actions, you've already shown you're not really an American. You're going to work for multinational, international, globalist intelligence agencies. And then you are part of, Betsy pointed out, the lying mainstream media, which is nothing but propaganda, and because of your position, we're supposed to believe you. No one believes either one of you two anymore, okay? No one, unless they're complete idiots, and there are a few of those out there. And they actually, they believe anything that they're told, really, when it comes down to it. So, Gina and Christopher, why would Trump listen to you? Dan Coates, you failed to stop surveillance. And then, Dan, you've done nothing. Nothing. You cannot name anything you have done since you became the head of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
What has he done about the election rigging? What has he done about the software stuff?
They haven't even given reports.
Nothing.
Trump ordered all of them to give reports. No reports have even been turned in. So Trump knows that he's dealing with idiots. Why would he listen to any of you? You come and you give the daily briefing and it's all lies. Now, Dan Coates, you had the nerve to say before the Senate Intelligence Committee that basically you disagree with Trump because ISIS still exists. And when you were asked the question where, you said in Syria, there's still a couple towns that still have a few ISIS members left in it. Those are your words. And then you said, but we should never underestimate the power of ISIS. ISIS is not over, blah, blah, blah. So you basically said there's a couple ISIS people in 2 towns in Syria, and then you went against what Trump said. And the other day, in public, you lied and you said that there was an entire city that was held by ISIS and that ISIS had just gained new ground. And we said that has to be a lie because Trump would have told the military to bomb them. And he didn't. So Dan Coates, we were hoping that you were going to be a good guy, but this is what happens when the presidential appointees don't know what they're doing, and then they have to follow the orders of the senior executive service members below them who are actually above them. And Dan Coates is nothing more than trying to save his career, hoping that he will be not remembered for the fact that he was helping lead the resistance against Trump. Now, you had a few sensible people there, because why? You had the director of military intelligence, the DIA. You had the National Security Advisor, and you had the head of the NSA. And I believe all 3 of them, at least 2 of them are generals, and the third one I believe is military. And they didn't say anything bad. Why? Because they know that they work for the commander-in-chief. The others? Oh, no, they're SES. I believe that Christopher is SES.
Yes,
I'm sure Gina is SES.
Mm-hmm.
I am sure that Clapper and Brennan were SES. Mm-hmm. And so the leaders in these areas who, in fact, still take their orders from the SES below them, because the ones below them maintain the status quo, the bureaucracy, maintain the career professionals who don't let anything go down any alley that it hasn't always gone down. They make sure things do not move forward. They make sure they're basically a resistance.
But aren't these people curious, just as individuals, if they would go out and see if what they're being told is true? I mean, wouldn't Jeannie Haspel just go into the internet and see if what she's being told is true, something basic like that? Or is she just relying on the lies of the senior executive service people?
Well, she's came up through the ranks, and so she is as guilty as anybody can be. Her and Christopher Wray, she was complicit with the coup d'etat, and to this very moment is. Same thing for Christopher Wray. He's 100% complicit in the coup d'etat, just like Clapper, just like Brennan and Comey and McCabe and James Baker and Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr and Glenn Simpson. They're all 100% complicit in an active coup d'etat. And we're supposed to listen to those people and take their advice, and people want to make a law. There'll be a new bill on the floor tomorrow that Trump must listen to his intelligence agencies.
Okay, that's fine, but we need to get intelligence agencies because these are clearly not.
No, they're not. They're too
No,
tainted.
They
were
are
they
the
could
enemy.
Be salvaged,
They are
can't
the
be.
enemy, Thomas.
Yeah.
They have infiltrated themselves in our government, and they give the president the incorrect information. Now, if it had been Hillary Clinton, oh my gosh, well, we wouldn't even be talking about this now. The whole place would have been locked down. The gates would have been wide open. The migrants, the invaders would have come in. The economy would have collapsed. And every baby in America would have been in jeopardy at birth.
Let's look at Hilda Beast. She said during the debates, again and again, and even before that in text messages, that 17 intelligence agencies, the entire intelligence community, all agreed that the DNC was hacked by Russians who were in favor of Trump and not her, and it was to harm her campaign. First off, she was simply not in communication with 17 intelligence agencies. First off, that lie is so big, it's ridiculous. She was no longer Secretary of State. She had no access to any of them. Now, it's a lie.
You think?
It was a lie. There were 17 of them. There were 4. And of the 4, when asked, Clapper, Brennan, Comey, and the NSA all say they did not agree on what happened. Okay? Absolutely not. And if you look at the 3 full-on reports that cost literally tens of millions of dollars to produce, the joint report, the meddling report, the third report, and now basically the entire Mueller investigation, which we just know that his part of it is probably about $40 million so far, but we don't know about the 12 other versions of it that Peter Strzok led, how much money was spent on that. That could have been hundreds of millions also. So hundreds of millions of dollars probably have been spent in a coup d'etat that is still going on, and the intelligence community
is supporting this.
Is still supporting it.
And we're paying for it. As taxpayers, we're paying for all these shenanigans.
Now, the 3 military people that were there, their replacements, they're new.
Where are you talking about there?
At the Senate Intelligence Committee on Global Threats by the intelligence community representatives, leaders. They didn't say, they're newbies, okay? And so what they can say is they didn't know. But the other ones that we've mentioned, they all knew. And they all know that it's still going on. So, in fact, when he gets those reports, those daily briefings, some of these news agencies report that he pays no attention. He'll interrupt them. He'll say, no, I don't think so. He'll basically call their judgment into question, and he doesn't really listen to them. I wouldn't either, because let's remember, the 17 intelligence agencies, according to Hillary Clinton, all said that Russia hacked the DNC and was on Trump's side. Also, the entire intelligence community said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that caused us to go to war. Okay, we also have the intelligence that the gas attacks were happening in Syria. Those intelligence reports came out of a British intelligence company. Those were fake. Notice they tried that on Trump twice, and then on the third time, he ignored them, so it didn't happen. The intelligence coming out of North Korea is incorrect. The intelligence coming out of Iran is correct. The intelligence coming from our southern borders is incorrect. So those people sitting there, except for the military guys, who in fact, the global threats, what global threats? China and Russia are ready to basically end nuclear weapons, okay? It's all about economy now. He's doing deals with them. They don't even have a job anymore. He's pulling the troops back. Okay? We don't need corporate intelligence. We use military intelligence, and anybody who lies like those corporate intelligence people, court-martialed. They go to jail, they get hung, they get shot, whatever. The point is, there's repercussions for their lies. So, Trump, we know where you get your intelligence. We know that you have an intelligence crew, and that intelligence crew gathers from every place good, and that they give you a report every single day, and it's really early in the morning, and that's when you start tweeting. And if you look closely, folks, you will hear that what he's tweeting about on one day, early in the morning, was in the alternative news the day before. The alternative news, not the mainstream media.
Are you saying that this is all being done by Q?
No, and Q doesn't have an insider in the Trump White House.
What? There's no Q? There's no insider?
Look, we've explained who Q is and all the different versions of Q. Now, folks, go back and just look at the different versions of Q, and then you'll start to learn some discernment. And if you really want to start listening to all the audios on Q, you're going to find that our name is going to come up from the beginning, because we were connected to that. They were using our news as the prompts for their mystery clues that they were leaving.
Well, this was before DeFango.
This was before DeFango. That's why we were the first to interview DeFango and give him a little bit of credit for what he did at the DEF CON meeting that he says, he and the other group, started. No, they didn't. But the point is, we know who started it, and we've told you all of that. And the sad point is that, that Mueller is using a Jerome Corsi as leverage now, and Roger Stone. The conspiracies can only be with these two absolutely spurious characters. Nobody could be any more spurious, I don't think, than Roger Stone, who they call him the trickster, or Jerome Corsi, who wrote on killing the deep state. He should know he was part of the deep state. So nothing is coming from Mueller's investigation. And the intelligence, where does Trump get his intelligence? As he said, he uses his own intelligence. His own head, folks. He doesn't blot out what he sees happening when somebody gives him propaganda to override it. He remembers just like we do. We're not going to believe your fake propaganda no matter how many times you're going to repeat it. We're going to remember the statistics, the details, the money, the lawsuits, where the money went, where the offshore accounts are, who are the people behind it, who are their family, where did they come from, what corporations.
But wait a minute.
That's what he's doing.
The Washington Post told me now that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been cited. I'm supposed to believe that.
We saw a picture of the back of somebody's head.
But you don't know that was taken there, and you don't know whose head it was. No, they're all lies. People, all lies. The thing you need to do, turn off that television set.
Yeah, turn off the television. Don't listen to the news, and figure out ways that you can count on. In other words, indictable evidence. If it is not a legal document that can be taken to a court to indict someone, then don't believe it. And the speculation that comes all the time, oh my goodness. If I was to read what was sent to me every day that is speculation about George Soros being arrested, Hillary Clinton being arrested, Gitmo's getting filled up, that Obama was arrested for 5 days and that he was in Gitmo and that he turned on the others, and that's the reason they now are going to get the 127,000 unsealed indictments open. If I listened to that nonsense, I would be overwhelmed. No, we go for the facts. We go for what can be proven. We go for what can be vetted. And intelligence needs to be that. The military is only as good as its intelligence. And if intelligence cannot be counted on and cannot be verified, and you need 3 sources to verify any intelligence, and right now we're using anonymous sources or no sources, and those intelligence reports that were given to the Senate, no sources, no information, no nothing.
And you're speaking as a former intelligence person in the NSA.
And their report, the National Intelligence Strategy, there is no strategy. Why? Because they stand against Trump. Their previous strategy was war, more war, and let America be taken over by the globalists. The new strategy, They ain't got a strategy. Dan Coates has no strategy. Dan Coates is a nothing. He will replace Dan Coates in his second term immediately. And he'll replace Christopher Wray the second that he can. And Jeannie Haspel, you've been told to stand down. Stop fighting wars and inciting wars for corporations that are globalist corporations. That is not your job. So, intelligence community, you need to go back to school and get some intelligence, because you ain't got none that means anything to Trump, because he knows a lot more than you do.